Hello friends, and welcome back to Freakish Fridays. Tattoo Biker here with you. And tonight we embark on a bone-chilling journey into the realm of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And what makes tonight's video truly captivating is that these encounters aren't merely tales from books or legends passed down through generations. No, what you're about to hear are true stories submitted by viewers just like you. So grab your boots and prepare yourselves for some real Bigfoot encounters. Now, let's ride. Number 1. Dear Tattooed Biker, in 1977, I was 11 years old, and I lived on the U.S. military base at Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland. We lived at the end of the post. There was about half a mile of woods behind our houses that emptied into the Chesapeake Bay tidal inlets. Behind my house was a lane, then 30 feet of grass where our garage was. It was the fall and dark after dinner. I had to put my bike away in the garage. After I put my bike in, I closed the doors. And as I was closing the padlock, I kind of felt like something had crept up behind me. I walked across the lane to our back sidewalk when I saw something moving behind an old wood pile on the wood's edge to the right of our garage. It was about 40 feet or so away. Our back porch light was on, but I still couldn't see clearly. But it looked like a tall person was hunched over, looking at me from the corner of the woodpile. It was about as tall as me, about 5 feet. I thought it was this 8th grade boy from down the street who always teased everyone. He was pretty tall. This whole family was super tall and of Nordic descent. So I called out, "Hey Davy, I see you. Stop trying to scare me." The figure then withdrew into the woods without making a sound, which at the time I thought was pretty weird. I then ran into the house and told my brother that someone was behind the woodpile and then went into the woods. The next morning, we caught the bus at 6 a.m. We went to private Catholic schools that were about an hour away. The bus pulled out of our loop road and onto the main road and had to stop as they were doing some kind of road work. Sitting on the right side of the bus and looking out the window, I could see through an opening in the woods down into a tidal inlet. The inlet sits about 50 feet or so below. The inlet is shaped like an arrowhead. I was viewing it from the tip of the arrowhead. This inlet was probably as large as 4 or 5 football fields. I saw a large upright creature walking down the center of the inlet with its back to me. It was walking along in the direction of the open bay. I had no doubt about what I was seeing. It looked dark brown, but there was gray-tipped hair all over. I viewed the creature for probably 10 seconds or so. Then the bus began to pull away. I went up to my brother in front and told him what I saw. I believe the woodpile event the night before was related. I saw Davy the next day, and he swore he wasn't out the previous evening. For those who think that I may have seen someone in a ghillie suit, that's not possible. Aberdeen Proving Grounds is just that, a proving ground for ballistics and munitions. Heaven only knows what else people aren't hunting, especially around Officers Row or anywhere on that post over the years. I've heard a few stories of people's Bigfoot encounters in Maryland, specifically in Hartford County, which borders York County, Pennsylvania. I have absolutely no interest in searching for these creatures, although I can't help but see their signs. Signed, Ted. Number 2. My name is Charles, and you can use my name if you wish. I have nothing to hide or be ashamed of, and I'm too damned old to be worried about what some non-believers might think. I'm of Native American and German heritage, precisely Cherokee and Choctaw, with a small amount of Irish, Scottish, and Bohemian thrown into the mix. I've always loved the outdoors, whether it be camping, hunting, fishing, or hiking. That is, until this damn creature took it all away from me. I worked as an oil well service operator in a Texas oil field for 25 years, and then went to work for the United States Postal Service, retiring in 2017 after 23 years of service. My encounter happened in 1974, and I was 21 years old. I'm still dealing with some PTSD. I planned a vacation to Beaver's Bend State Park in southeast Oklahoma during the first week of March 1974. My pregnant wife was 6 months along, and I planned a tent camp on the Mountain Fork River below the dam on Broken Bow Leg for 4 days. So I rented the farthest south tent site, which was only about 30 yards from a cement dam on the river. This made the upper portion deeper for swimming, kayaking, and fishing. We had beautiful weather in the low to mid-50s and highs of 65 to 70 degrees. The first 2 days were absolutely terrific, and we had fresh fish for breakfast and dinner. On the morning of the third day, I got up at 5 a.m. and made a pot of coffee. I had 1 cup and then grabbed my tackle box, rod, reel, and a 5-gallon bucket to put my catch in, and then walked down to the cement dam, where I'd been fishing the first 2 days. I've been fishing for about 25 minutes, and I already had a 3-pound smallmouth bass and 2 rainbow trout, about 2 pounds each. I planned to just catch 1 more fish and then call it quits. I went to make another cast, and my lure hung up on what I thought was a tree limb. So I turned to look up to see where my lure had caught the limb, and then all I could see was a wall of cinnamon brown hair about 4 feet from me. My God, my lure had hung up on the upper left chest of something that I didn't even know existed. It was at least 10 to 11 feet tall, 5 feet wide across the shoulders, and at least 1,000 to 1,100 pounds. Its biceps were as big as my waist. My eyes moved up to its face. It had a conical head. The eyes were big and red. It was looking down at me and snarling. Its teeth were as big as a horse's and had only slightly pronounced canines. Its head looked to be about 2.5 times the size of mine. I couldn't move. I could feel and hear a very low growl that seemed to rattle my bones with a pressure all over my body that I can't explain. I truly believed that my life was over. I couldn't even speak or scream. All I could remember thinking was, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry for hurting you." Then, like turning off a light switch, everything went black. I evidently passed out. I believe that was about 6:30 a.m. when I woke up. I felt so drained of energy, and I had a terrible headache. I sat up and looked around, seeing that my tackle box had been smashed flat. My rod was broken into 4 pieces, and the 3 fish that I caught were gone from my bucket. After regaining my composure, I found 2 footprints that were huge where the beast had been standing. I had a measuring tape, so I measured both prints at 22.5 inches long and 10 inches across the ball of the foot, 6 inches across the heel. Damn, I'd never seen a footprint that huge. Then I realized that I had to get away from there. I picked up all my broken fishing equipment and carried all of it to the trash bin. I walked back to camp, poured myself another cup of coffee, and waited for my wife to wake up. I poured her a cup, and she asked how the fishing was this morning. Well, I told her that during the night, someone had come into our camp and taken all of my fishing gear. Oh, she was pissed, but that was way better than me trying to explain what I'd actually seen and what had transpired down at the river. I was feeling very lucky to still be breathing. So, I had 1 more cup of coffee and then told my wife that I wasn't feeling quite up to par and that I was just ready to go home. I can't help but believe that this creature had been watching me fishing and wanted my fish. To this day, I still can't believe how it snuck up behind me. I've given away almost all of my fishing gear within the last couple of years. I had an interest in finding out more about what took my love of the outdoors away. So I'm submitting the story and posting it in various groups to try and get some feedback. Thanks. Signed, Charles. Number 3. Dear Tattooed Biker, I have a story that I'd like to share. I was driving home from the night shift at my job in Pinkham Notch, New Hampshire, in the White Mountain National Forest. It was half an hour's drive at around 10:30 p.m. I'm always on alert for moose and bear, which can pop onto the road at any time. The night was foggy and wet. Suddenly, about 10 minutes from town, I noticed a movement next to my truck on the driver's side. It was a very large animal, running alongside at an angle, as though trying to cross Route 16 from left to right. My truck was in the way of its crossing, and I swerved to avoid it. It was doing about 50 miles an hour, and it kept right up for about a quarter mile. It had a full coat of 6-inch long, silvery black and gray hair, thrusting its hind legs forward so fast it was a blur, and pushing its long front leg and arms under its body to propel itself. The head was tucked down in the dark. I maintained my speed, and the creature kept right up, not seeming to tire at all. Then suddenly the movement turned into a hyperspeed blur, and it launched forward in front of my truck and jumped the guardrail near a stony brook to my right. It suddenly disappeared, and it wasn't a bear. I've spent a lot of time alone or with others in the mountains of New Hampshire and Maine with many large animal encounters. I never saw anything like this before. It opened my eyes that these Bigfoot beings are around. Now, as I hike the deep woods with my dog, I notice strange things, like uprooted saplings, tree trunks, and roots stuck into the ground upside down. Carefully arranged identical stones and patterns on the path. I had feelings of not being alone. I quietly sing and deliberately think that I'm simply passing through, and that I have no desire to mingle with or bother others on the trail. I always travel now with my dog and a loaded 9mm pistol, just in case. So far, I've been left alone. I bump into hikers on the Appalachian Trail and sometimes give them a ride to town. So far, no one has admitted to any encounters, but I always ask if they've noticed anything strange while out on the trail. Thanks for reading. Signed, Vicky. Number 4. Dear TB, my story began about 14 years ago, while I was out deer hunting in the South Fork of the Shoshone River, just outside Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. Just before the sun went down, my buddy flushed a huge buck, entirely by accident. As we were walking back to the truck, he shot it and saw it run off. He knew he'd gotten a good solid hit on it, so he went over to where he shot it and found obvious signs of blood everywhere. So he stayed there a few minutes and smoked a couple cigarettes to hopefully let the deer stop and lay down and bleed out. After securing permission from the landowner, we're able to cross onto his property. We found his deer. We field dressed it, drug it out, and loaded it in the truck. Just before we were getting ready to leave, I realized that I left my gloves on the ground back where we had dressed the deer. So I told my buddy to hang on for a minute. I run back and grabbed the gloves. As I stood up, literally, and every hair on my body stood up, like a static electricity kind of feeling. I slowly turned and scanned everything around me to see if maybe I was just picking up on the feeling that there was a bear nearby. I quickly started moving back towards the truck. I got near the vehicle and I started relaxing, but I was still feeling really uneasy. And the thought in my head was to leave and get out of there. My buddy looked at me and asked what was wrong, because I guess it was written all over my face. I told him that I had a weird feeling, and that I thought that we might be in the vicinity of a bear, because we had seen lots of sign that day. He looked at me strangely and then said, "What did the landlord have to say?" I looked at him puzzled because I had no idea what he was talking about. We talked to the landowner after shooting the deer to secure permission to cross into his woodlot, but that was at his house, out close to the highway. So I asked him, "What are you talking about?" He said that he saw who he thought was the landowner, coming from where his house, walking through the woods to where I was retrieving my gloves. He saw him kind of disappear back further into the woods where I should have been. I was completely confused at that point because I hadn't seen anybody. I didn't hear anybody, and there was enough leaves and such on the ground that it would have been difficult for someone to walk quietly without me at least hearing them. I just kind of shook it off at that point, thinking I let my imagination get the best of me. We proceeded to leave. We had to stop back at the landowner's house to give him the portion of the state tag so he could get reimbursed. My buddy went up to the door to leave his tag, and the owner greeted him there. I got out of the truck at that point, walked up there, and they were already in conversation. I realized it wasn't the landowner that my friend saw going into the woods. So we got into a short discussion with the landowner, and I told him what had happened. He looked at me and chuckled a bit and said, "Oh, I see you've met my friend." I asked him who that was, and he said, No, not a friend, but a friend that I see in the woods every once in a while." At that point, my buddy and I realized what he was talking about. Later that night, I was at my buddy's house before heading back home. We were talking about the encounter, and his wife was the first one to bring it up and say out loud the word Bigfoot. For some reason, when she actually said it out loud, I just felt this overwhelming terror. I went home, and a few days later, I wanted to go hunting again in the same area. But when I got down there, I was hit with this overwhelming feeling like I did the previous time. It was just something telling me that I don't want to go down there by myself. I did listen to that sixth sense and got right back into my truck and went home. I'll be honest with you, I haven't set foot in the woods since that day. Thanks for reading. Signed, Matthew. And there it is. All I have tonight of first-hand accounts of spine-tingling Bigfoot encounters. I hope these stories have ignited your curiosity and sparked a fascination for the unexplained. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to join our community of courageous truth seekers. Remember, the world is full of mysteries just waiting to be unraveled, and together we'll continue to uncover the secrets. So until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.